Welcome to the podcast, Restore Yourself, Restore Your Marriage, where it's all about discovering the thoughts that get you in the mood, the thoughts that get you out of the mood, and how creating a deeper connection with yourself creates a deeper connection with your spouse. I'm your coach, Shelly Anderson, coaching you through life, love, and intimacy. This is episode number 94, Sensational Romance.
It sounds sensational.
It is going to be sensational. Today we're going to talk about a really fun topic, and that is kind of like what can be involved in setting the scene for an awesome, sensational night of romance and intimacy. And the reason I like to talk about this is because sometimes this is really neglected, right? It's like sometimes I think maybe for women, we imagine things to be romantic or we want them to be romantic.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're just not. It's almost like, well, this is what we got to do. This is the next thing on the list.
All I can think of right now is Weird Science, you know, that 80s movie?
Yes.
Chips, dips, chains, and whips.
Oh, that was such a good movie.
Is that what we're talking about?
No.
We're not talking about kinky stuff?
No, we're not.
Oh, well, could we?
No, not on this episode.
Okay, all right. Well, let's not talk about it then.
No. And sometimes I think that I've gotten this comment a lot from my female clients, especially when they're struggling with wanting to be intimate. Like they feel like they're lacking the desire. And sometimes when we talk about this topic of sensational romance and that it's something we can create for being intimate, the question I get the most is, well, why should I do all the work? Why do I need to put in effort? It matters to my husband so much. Why doesn't he put in the work?
That's a good question.
It is a great question, and I think we need to answer it. And the answer is, when we leave all that work and put that responsibility 100% on somebody else, we're always waiting, and our happiness and our romantic evening is dependent on somebody else.
Well, I would love it if you could just read my mind and do everything I want, but that's not going to happen.
Right, and it's the same for the woman.
Yeah.
We're not mind readers, and so we have to eliminate this notion that, well, if they just loved me enough, that they would just know to do all these things.
So stop what you're doing. Listen to what we're about to say, because this is going to help. Okay? Also, it would mean a lot to us if you would just accept our gratitude for listening to our podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. You guys have been awesome. And we still have a pretty small list of people that we send this to as far as the weekly email and those that watch. We're about to release kind of the beast, right? We're about to launch something much bigger than what we've been doing. But we want to tell you thank you so much. And it would mean a lot to us if you just like this, if you're watching YouTube, and share it as much as you can, because we're in the next month or so, we're going to launch our really the helpful tools that we've been talking about for so long, in addition to this podcast that we do for free. But we just want to thank you so much for joining us.
That's right.
So, but this episode I think is critical to maybe changing your mindset to intimacy and what you can do to make it better.
That's right. And the other part to that question that I get asked so much with my clients is that it feels really good when we are actively engaged in solving a problem that we're facing. It does not feel good to wait around for somebody else to solve it, nor is it somebody else's responsibility to solve something that we struggle with. So if we want things to be more romantic, get more romantic.
If you're not doing that, you're setting yourself up for more temptation to blame your spouse.
Yes.
So if you're just waiting for him or her to do the things that you think they should do, well, they're probably not going to fulfill all those expectations and your requirements and your list, right? Pack your shit up. We have a podcast called Pack Your Shit Up, and let's stop putting the shit on the other person.
Yeah.
Like, you should do this, you should do that. Well, we can invite and we can share our desires and all that, but so what you're saying is engage yourself in making it better even if it's just for yourself.
That's right. And here is a beautiful side effect of creating the romantic evening that you want for yourself. This is the beautiful side effect, is that as you're going through the process of thinking about what you want to experience through the different senses, which we're going to talk about, as you think about it and as you plan it, and maybe like throughout little moments throughout the day, you're like, oh, I'm going to want this candle, lit this evening. So you go and you get that candle. You are thinking about the evening.
Now, are you like trying to telepathically tell me?
No.
You're actually taking care of it.
I'm taking care of it. I'm thinking, how do I want to experience intimacy tonight? How do I want it to be romantic? And so for me, candles are a big thing. And so for sure, if I look at my collection of candles, because I'm obsessed with candles.
Has a collection.
I will say, okay, which one do I want to look at, or which one do I want to smell tonight? Well, if I'm doing that earlier in the day, I'm thinking about that evening. And so what is that? Thought work. Mm-hmm. So this becomes key for women who say they don't have a natural desire to be intimate. Because it helps a ton, because now you're thinking about it. You're thinking about it in a positive way. You're not just being on the reactive end where you're like, oh, my husband only gave me a hug today because he just wants sex tonight. You're not being on the defense. You're being proactive, and you're thinking about it in your terms. So then you're going through the action of making those things happen later on tonight. It feels very empowering.
So if you have sex for duty reasons at times, you're going to have sex with your husband anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe not always, right? That's unfair to say you're going to do it no matter what. But the nights that you do it, I said do, I apologize. But the nights that you do, or the days that you do, whenever it is, wouldn't you rather have more of a say in how that goes than just to be there feeling like you're being used or just like you're there for duty?
Yes.
You might as well step it up, take control, and make it better for you.
Yes. And
awesome.
It feels amazing.
And it'll be amazing for your husband as well if you do that.
Yeah. And I just think that that's the part that my clients don't see in the beginning, is that they just look at it as like, well, why should I have to do the work? I'm like, no, you benefit. You feel amazing. Not because, oh, now you've just created this romantic evening. Yes, but you feel amazing along the way.
Yeah.
So it's not just what's going to happen at 10:30 that night. You feel amazing at, 2:00 in the afternoon when you put the candle there.
Those sound like boss thoughts.
They are totally boss thoughts. You're being boss of that side of yourself and not waiting around. So that feels really good. So we're going to talk about sensational romance. And this is because we are going to tap into the senses. And the reason I absolutely love this concept of sensational romance is that it brings in the concept of variety. Yeah. And this is a concept that is really overlooked for women, but is often talked about for men, especially when it comes to sex and fantasy and whatever it is.
So women don't have to let the man steal variety from them.
Right.
That's really what we do. Like, the whole reason why we think of men is because we think, oh, well, we want variety. We want to try something new. Like I said earlier, chips, dips, chains, whips. That's a joke, right? I don't really like chips, dips, chains, and whips. But it was a joke from a silly 80s movie that was probably inappropriate, and I don't necessarily recommend it. But I really like the movie. But anyway, what you're saying is variety can be what you want it to be.
Yes. And what I've learned, and from all the self-help books that talk about women's sexuality and being able to enjoy intercourse and orgasm more often, they talk about variety. And this is something that we don't talk about as women, what that means for us, because variety for us is usually not kinky sex or new positions.
Right.
So if it's not that, what is it for women? And part of it, a big part, is using all of our senses in the experience.
Powerful, because your senses in general, in my experience, your overall senses are much more powerful than mine.
Yeah. And so I think that's something that has been very not really talked about and not really taught. And so if it's not talked about or taught, how are women going to know that they should include their senses and really incorporate them and think about their senses when it comes to intimacy? They don't know.
So we're going to tell you and talk about this openly.
Yeah.
And straightforward, in a straightforward way, so that it can hopefully help you, but also hopefully help others that you share this with too.
That's right. So let's just get down to it. The first one is sight. And again, what are the things that, as you imagine a very romantic night, what are the things that you want to see? I know for me, I like dim lights. And this is different for everybody. A lot of people like dim lights. A lot of people like no lights. A lot of people like light on.
And there's no right answer.
There is none. It's just good to know what it is that helps create that atmosphere for yourself.
In some ways, what we're doing is helping you create an intimacy experience.
Yes.
Right? So as you listen to us go through this, think about each of these senses and what really turns you on.
Yeah. And women's arousal, when it comes to sex, is a responsive arousal. That means we are very influenced by what is happening in our environment. And so if we see lights in the way that we like, and we've set it up that way, we're going to respond to that environment in a positive way. So for me, I like low lights, whether that's a candle or, a flame or a fireplace, whatever. I like that. But it could be other things. What do you want to see? What else do you want to see in the room?
Disco ball for some people, maybe. I don't know.
That's right. It could be all flashing neon lights. But the point is to think about that. What do you want to see? Do you want to see drapes? Do you want to see nature? Do you want all the blinds closed? I mean, there's just so many things that could contribute to your experience. So think about it.
And also for both of you, right? Like visually what you want the other person to look like at the beginning. Now, does it have to, like really for men, does it have to be some sexy lingerie or something like that? Like, no, not necessarily.
Right.
Right. I think for me to see you comfortable and feeling in the mood is the most important thing. I don't need to see you in anything necessarily specific. Right. But if you're confident and you're like, that is a huge turn on.
Right.
And the opposite is true, right? If you don't want to see your husband just naked, right? Tell him, put some PJs on or something or whatever it is that you like. I mean, the sight probably isn't as important for you as it is for your husband, but still it comes down to the mood and the feeling between you two. Even though it's the sight that we're talking about, it really does touch all the other parts of your senses.
It's very true.
And if something distracts you, get rid of it.
Yes. Yeah. So it's important to think about how sight plays a role in all this. Okay. The next one is going to be smell. Mm-hmm. Now, this is a big one for me. I am very...
I'm smelling my armpits for those that aren't watching.
I love smells.
But not that smell.
No, maybe not that smell. But smells really get my senses going and they really add to the experience. And so if there's a variety of smells, or even if there's just one smell that I really enjoy, that really just takes my level of desire and it moves it into that space of being aroused. Smells can do that.
Now, let me say this too, because I think that when we're thinking about this earlier on, we might be able to prepare ourselves and how we smell too, rather than just like going into it, not really worrying about that, and then feeling self-conscious about how you smell.
Yes.
Right? Make sure that you're getting rid of that worry. And for guys, right? Make sure you don't stink, right? If your wife likes that, that's great. But you should know what she likes and what she doesn't. And if you don't know, you should talk about it. Because there are definitely women and men that are turned off by certain smells as well. Yes. And so we should address those things, and we should respect each other enough to address the smells so that the smell, that sense is positive, and the aromatherapy or the aphrodisiac effect of certain smells is in full effect rather than the opposite.
Right. I've had clients, and I remember when I first started coaching, this would always surprise me. But when we would talk about things that really kind of make them have a negative experience with intimacy and intercourse, for some women, smells are a strong one. They don't enjoy the smells. And so it's something to consider and address. For me, when you put on 2 colognes, there's 2 colognes that I just...
One at a time.
Yeah.
2 that you like.
Yes, one at a time. But you have 2 colognes that if you put them on, man, that really contributes to me being in the mood. It adds to the experience for me. And then I will go in to smell you more because I want that to be part of it.
And then that leads to more energy between the 2 of us and that connection. And that doesn't mean that the smell, like I don't just put cologne on and she jumps my bones.
No.
That's not how it works. But if I smell good, then that's another level that is I've already broken down the walls, and she's able to get closer to me because she wants to be closer to me. And then being closer, we feel that energy between the 2 of us, that intimacy increases. And so there's not one thing that's like, hey, that's what I do, and she's just on it.
Right.
That's not how it works. And you should know that by now, but sometimes we don't pay attention. So here you go. It's an opportunity to pay more attention.
Yeah. And there's other things that can contribute to smells too. Like there are lubrications that have awesome smells. We have one that we just love, the vanilla buttercream one. That is my favorite. Yeah. Not because it has a strong smell, but it's actually really subtle. But I love that I can smell that at different times during intimacy, and it just adds to the experience.
Yeah.
So it is something to consider. And I love what you said too about if you are self-conscious about your own smells, well, just take a moment to take care of that. Go take a quick bath or do what you need to clean yourself up and, take care of those smells so that that's not on your mind while you're going into the experience of intimacy.
And guys that are just like, hey, come on, baby, let's go. And you don't think about that. Like, seriously, that is just disrespectful.
Yeah.
And if you want to really have a wonderful, intimate experience with your wife, I'll just say it straight up. Like, think about what you smell like. And if you need to take a shower, great, take a shower. She might not tell you, but it's certainly, I can almost guarantee you, anybody would rather be intimate with someone who smells good and doesn't smell like ass. I'll just put it that way. Right. You don't want to do that to your spouse.
Right. Okay. So let's move on to the third one. The third one is touch and feel. So this one can be really fun and interesting, right? Like, what sensations do you want to experience that night? Obviously, there's probably going to be some sexual touch going on.
Yeah.
But also think outside that box, which would be...
No pun intended.
What do you want your back to experience? Like, what's the surface like? Are you going to be on the bed? How do the sheets feel? Have you ever mixed up the feel of the sheets? Do you want to be on a rug? Do you want to be next to the fireplace?
Have you tried new sheets, right? Like, maybe you've never tried flannel sheets or silk sheets or, again, back to the variety that you were talking about.
Yes.
This is a really awesome one because when you put new sheets on our bed, like sometimes we'll go from just like regular sheets and then all of a sudden like some new flannel sheets in the winter.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And, then we try different feelings.
Yes.
And it's great for me too. And I know that you love that and you feel so cozy in the bed. And if you feel cozy in the bed, then, there's some walls that are broken down already because you feel good.
Yes, that's right. So those are some things to consider. Also, I think in that same category of feel and touch, what other sensations, does your skin want to experience? Lubrication is the big one. We are not shy to talk about the power of lubrication and how much a woman's body needs to lubricate. It's meant to lubricate, but it lubricates at different levels all the time.
Even if her body naturally lubricates well, additional lubrication doesn't hurt.
No.
We joke about this because, almost every time we're curious and we look at like Cosmopolitan's like the best sex tip of all time. right? And
Right.
we'll open it up and almost guaranteed it's lube.
That's right.
Almost every single time it's lubrication.
Yes.
It's true.
It is true. And so I hope that whoever's listening to this, that we can really let go of the stigma that going to buy lubrication is somehow bad or naughty or means something like something's wrong. No. It's just that our body needs lubrication. And for women, because our levels of lubrication are different at different times of the month, we just need that extra help. And there's no shame in it. I mean, I have a collection of lubrications.
We have a collection.
That's right. So, I mean, we can pick and choose which one we're in the mood for, which is awesome, again, because it adds to the variety.
And you can use it as a massage oil at the same time.
Yes. And so being able to find some of those lubrications that, you know, have multiple uses, that smell good, taste good, can work as a lubricant and a massage oil, like that's awesome.
And you'll find one that you like, right? And maybe you find 5 that you like. I mean, we tend to like the ones that aren't really sticky, that rub in the skin really well. I mean, it's your preference, but yeah, again, not shy at all about saying that lubrication is awesome.
Yeah. And I think going along with touch too is that we can think about it in the actual lovemaking experience, right? Because sometimes I think we just start to go on autopilot, right? Like this is how we do it. We've been kind of doing it this way for this many years. We don't think about changing it up sometimes, but we can go into the experience and say, maybe I want it to be faster this time. Like let's experience what it actually feels like to go quicker, or let's see what it feels like to experience something that's a lot slower than normal. But being able to experiment and look at all the different ways we can experience touch and sensation, again, can add to how we are experiencing intimacy with variety.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really good place where we can start asking some questions and have a really good conversation about that. Okay, moving on to the fourth one, taste.
Mm-hmm.
This is a fun one. And again, this can go back to lubrications that have really good taste, but also hydration. Sometimes we forget that at the end of the day, we have been going through a lot. Maybe we haven't eaten well. I know for me, hydration is never on my mind, but being able to have, you know, drinks or a snack available to us can help. It can add to the experience.
Right. And maybe not something like Funyuns, right? But like something that's chocolatey or something that is something that you both can share.
Right.
Right. That isn't going to get in the way of kissing or anything like that. Right. You don't want to, you know, have a dinner.
No.
Right. Like get something that it goes along with that you both really like, that doesn't gross you out if it's in the other person's mouth.
Right. But I'll say it has always surprised me, and it's been a pleasant surprise, where maybe in the middle of making out or things are starting to get a little more heavy between us, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so thirsty. And I'll reach over because usually it's you that has brought me a glass of water. And then just feel and taste that cold water in the middle of it, I'm like, yes.
And then the kiss your cold mouth.
Yes, it adds. Yeah. It's very fun, and it feels really amazing. So yeah, there are wonderful things that you can do to add to the taste. You can, like you said, add chocolate. And there are some fun lubrications that taste like chocolate.
Not as good as the real thing, of course, but
right.
You get all kinds of flavors.
That's right. It's just so that you guys know that those things are out there, or to have like Martinelli's, you know, something fun and delicious.
And it adds to the sense when you're drinking something that tastes good and fizzy like that too. Again, back to the kissing part. Might as well try it. See what you think.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the fifth sense. The fifth sense is what we hear. Now, you and I both really love this one because we love music. We love to create music and compose music. But it doesn't have to be music, but it can be. And we've definitely found some awesome songs and albums that we love to listen to. I definitely have some playlists that I listen to earlier in the day that get me kind of in the mood, and I prepare myself for later on that evening. But then we have some playlists that work for the actual love making session, which is fabulous. But there's also something to be said for other sounds besides music, like nature.
Right.
Like listening to the wind or listening to water or whatever it is.
Whatever it is that helps you to feel relaxed and romantic and something that you both like.
Yeah. So that's something to consider, is what you're listening to, what's in the background.
And also, I'll just add this, is that sometimes we worry about the kids hearing us or other people hearing us, like if we're at a hotel or something like that. Just think about that. What's going to help you not feel anxiety about that?
Yes.
So just talk about it and figure out what's best so that you don't have to worry about other people and what they're hearing.
And I'll say this too, and I think this is a really important one, because I know that when my clients come to me, and I've experienced this myself, our mind can wander.
Yeah.
Our mind can wander during intercourse. I've joked, at times that early on in our marriage, I would redecorate the house during lovemaking sessions. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to pay attention. I need to clue in. And I have found that music really helps me to be able to stay really present in the moment, and my mind does not wander as much because I'm enjoying listening to the music and the different beats and how it's playing into the experience.
And also, as you were talking about earlier, the preparing that thinking before, like earlier on in the day, listen to the music.
Yeah.
Listen to something that's gonna help you get in the mood.
I have a playlist called Shelley's Prep Music. It's specifically designed for music that helps get me in the mood for intimacy, but it's not the same songs as that we would listen to.
Right.
It's very different, and I love that. Okay, we're going to go to the last two, which are different. They're not really what we would consider our five senses, but they are just as important, maybe even more so. And this one is going to be the mental sense. What are our thoughts? Because this is so important. If our thoughts are really caught up on all of our to-do lists, the things that we're not doing as we enter our lovemaking session, we're not going to enjoy it as much. And so what I've learned to do, I do this myself, especially if my brain is super busy and I have a lot going on. I have a little notebook next to our bed. I just write down those thoughts, the most pressing ones, like, oh, I really need to figure this out. I just write it down and I tell myself, you're going to get to that. Don't worry. It's coming back down.
You're not going to forget it.
I won't forget it. So I take it, I transfer it from my mind and I put it onto paper. So I know that it's going to be taken care of and not forgotten. But the thoughts that we have, this is the important aspect of thought work. If we have negative thoughts going into a lovemaking experience, we are not going to enjoy it. And if we are not enjoying it, why would we come back for more?
Right.
So being able to address some of our thoughts ahead of time, even if we don't solve everything and just write it down and say, I'll come back to it, that is a gift we give ourselves. And it really allows us to be more present during the whole process and experience. And we'll be able to allow our brain to go to that pleasure part and say, okay, that was good. You're interested in coming back for more of this.
Yeah. And there's also times when maybe you need to have a conversation about something beforehand. And for us, some of those conversations that we've had that may be a little bit more intense about something, that usually ends up in preparing us, because there's forgiveness, there's change, there's acknowledgement of faults. Like sometimes those things have to happen, but if it doesn't have to happen and it can wait, great. Let it wait.
And I think for my clients, what I find most is that there's some thought of like the to-do list, right? It's the busyness of what needs to be done. Those can be written down. But again, if there's some things like, have those discussions or say, I really want to be intimate with you, but this thought keeps coming to my mind. Like maybe let's just discuss this quick.
Yeah. And for the man, I think it's a good idea. If you realize or have a sense that there's something going on, you can ask, right? Don't just take advantage of her and just try to, get some action, right? It's much more sensitive to ask, is there anything I can do to help? Is there anything I can do to help you feel better? What can I do to, help you get past whatever it is?
Yeah.
I mean, you should know her well enough.
Okay. Now for the last one, it's going to be the emotions, our feelings. And we do feel this, but it's a different type of feeling than what we were talking about.
Emotion is taking me over.
Yes. So we know, at least with life coaching, our emotions, our feelings come from the thoughts that we have.
Yes.
So if we are not having good thoughts towards our spouse, if we're like feeling like we're going into that intimacy session out of duty and we don't like that concept, we're not going to feel good. And that makes intercourse not as comfortable. It makes our desire is going to be very low. Our libido is going to be low. And at the end of it all, and as we're analyzing how that went, it's not that the end is not going to be good.
No.
We will not have good thoughts about it. We will not have good feelings about it, which means the pleasure part of our brain is not activated in a good way. And it's going to say, why would I go back for more of that?
You want at least to have one good thing that brings you back.
Yes.
It's like when I golf. I need one good shot. That's all I need. One good shot, I'm coming back. I'm not a golfer, but I like just the one good shot. And I can remember that. And that is a positive thing when I go back to when someone asks me if I want to play again. It's the same thing, I think.
I think so too. And if we find that we're going into the experience with really negative emotions, it's because we have negative thoughts.
Right.
Those are connected every time. You can't disconnect those. And so it's important to go back and look at those thoughts that are really creating all that negative feeling towards your spouse. So I think it would be a really awesome idea to really consider your feelings and what your feelings are before you even go into that lovemaking session. And ask yourself, what 3 emotions do I want to experience? What emotion do I want to experience and feel before we have intercourse? And then what emotion do I want to feel during intercourse? If we think about that, that really can be a game changer to help us think like, okay, if I want to feel cherished during our intimate experience, how am I going to think about what we're experiencing together that helps me feel that I am cherished?
Now, is this something that you would tell me?
I could.
Okay.
Not every emotion is going to require something from you, but that was one example where maybe I could express that to you. But it could also be that I want to be maybe I want to feel very in tune with
Right.
my body. I want to feel more intensely the experience that my body is going through, the sensations. Maybe I want to really feel that I am aligning with the sexual side of myself. And so I would really need to be in the right mindset, being mindful of the whole experience. And that's something I would not need to necessarily communicate to you.
Now, you might not need to tell me that specifically, but if you want to feel that way, then you may need to communicate with me during our intimacy, like slow down or wait a little longer for actual penetration, or let's do this a little longer. I mean, communication is always huge.
Yes.
During intimacy. And so in order for you to make sure that you feel a certain way, then you need to communicate that during the lovemaking session.
Yes.
And if you don't, then your chances of experiencing what you want to experience might not be as high.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay.
And I think also to think about what emotions do you want to experience after intimacy, right? Because a lot of times have found this with my clients, they'll go through the motions. They'll go through intimacy and they'll do it out of duty, whatever. And then after, they cry.
Can I ask you this? How often do you think your clients that you talk to, or even friends or anyone that you know, how often do they have a negative experience? And then if you ask them, did you communicate to your spouse during that experience Or did you just let it happen the way it happened?
Usually it's they've just let it happen.
Yeah. So that's one thing to ask yourself, right? Are you just letting it happen to you?
Right.
Or are you actively being the one who is making sure that your experience is as positive as it can be? And that's something that I think is really sad for a lot of people that go through this, spousal duty perspective.
Yeah.
And I will say, from a man's perspective, we're just doing what we know what to do.
Right.
Right. We're just following our instinct as well. And I don't think any decent man would just say, "Oh, be quiet. I don't care what you think."
Right.
We all totally care what our spouse thinks
Right.
about whether or not it's a good experience or not. Because if you're not having a good experience, and I know that, I'm going to want to do whatever I can to change it.
Yeah.
Because I want you to have a good experience. That means so much to us, is that we're good lovers.
Yes.
It does. It means so much. And so if you're not saying it, if you're not communicating, then you're doing yourself a disservice, but also him.
Yeah. And your marriage as a
Yeah.
whole.
Yeah.
Is not good for marriage. And so I think sometimes we can find that we're just kind of white knuckling it through the experience. And then afterwards, we're just like, we're so sad or so upset about how it went. Even though maybe the whole thing wasn't like super negative, it's because we had negative thoughts. So we had negative feelings about it. And it kind of comes out at the end. And a lot of times my clients, they don't let their husbands know. They're crying in the bathroom alone.
Yeah. I think the times that we've talked about things like that, and when I know that there's something I can do differently, that's actually an intimate experience in and of itself.
Yeah.
Is having that talk about what can be better, because I do care. And I've had moments when I've been heartbroken because I realized that there's something that I'm doing that you don't like, or that, wasn't meaningful, or I thought it was much better than it was. I mean, that's a terrible thing to hear, but I'd much rather know that so that I can be better for you.
Right.
But if I don't know it, I can't do anything about it.
Right. So I hope that as you're listening to this episode today, that it's able to spark some new thoughts within yourself of like, hey, I have a big say in what this experience is like, what intimacy is like. And if I'm not enjoying it that much right now, I have a lot of say in how I can improve it for myself.
Heck yeah, you do. You do.
It's so true. You do.
Don't hesitate. I'm telling you right now, you have so much say, and you really have all the say in all reality, because men are very simple when it comes to sex. I think we're not as simple as we think we are, because I think over time we realize that we want a lot more of the same things that our wife wants.
Yeah.
In the long run, I think we become more alike, and the man probably moves farther than the woman does. I mean, they both have to move, right? Your compromise is one of the keys to marriage.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, we're not going to know that we want more than just the physical, release and orgasm and whatever it is that it is at the beginning, because the emotional side is so wonderful when we experience it with our spouse and when we truly become one. But we don't get there without you.
That's true.
We can't get there without you. And so if you want your spouse to be more united with you when it comes to intimacy, you have to speak up. You have to speak up, and you have to take control. And we don't mind you taking control at all.
Right.
We don't.
Right.
And we will be, if it's done out of love and it's done out of, a desire to be closer, then we will be in whatever it is.
Yes. So I hope that this podcast will help you guys think about that, and think about that throughout this week. And as you're contemplating your experience with intimacy with your spouse and how it can improve as you add your variety through the senses, and never, ever, ever neglecting the most important work, which is your thoughts, which trigger your emotions. When you put those at the heart, man, things really can become quite beautiful.
No doubt.
So We hope that you've enjoyed this and that you will share it with anyone else that you know who may be struggling with intimacy or different challenges in their marriage. Because remember, the more you restore this type of intimacy within yourself, the more you can restore it with your spouse. Thank you so much for listening today, and we hope you will join us again next week.
Bye.